Louis, you ready to take it away? 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom. I am giving this software architecture workshop with my good friend Louis here, and we are gonna absolutely blow your minds, knock your socks right off. It's gonna be amazing. And this is totally not going to be the loosest and fastest presentation that you've had today. So bear with us if things go crazy. That's all I'm going to say. This is very much a beginner sort of workshop. So it's very much designed if you have very little technical knowledge, if you're very much just getting started, if this is your first hackathon, you have a good idea of what you want to do, but you're not sure how to do it. This is probably the place for you. You want to add anything on top of that, Louis?
Yeah, basically what Thomas said. So it's also, we kind of planned it to be a fairly loose, casual kind of workshop. So if you've got questions or anything like that, feel free to like shout out or like pop your hand up, and we'll see about answering any questions that you have to come up.
Yeah, definitely feel free to come off mute as well if you feel like it. There's not a huge amount of us here. So it'll be nice and casual, very fun, very chill. So I guess a bit of an overview of what we're going to do is we've got 3 parts. So the first part is how to set up a Git repository. Very much simple, adding a file, committing a file, making sure that people are inside your Git repository, and just generally getting up some collaboration tools. Very important, especially when it comes to coding with more than 2 people. It can get very tricky very quickly. So that's the first part. The second part, what we're going to do is show you how to bootstrap a React app with a Python Flask backend. So that's a pretty standard, nothing's Flash, nothing... but it'll definitely get you going in the realm of a hackathon. There's plenty of documentation and tooling out there to help you with any specific use cases. And then finally, for part 3, we'll sort of join those 2 together through APIs. So doing, helping to torment Tom. Thanks, Sam. But yeah, we'll be combining the front end, so our React app, and the back end, our Flask app together using APIs. REST APIs, and then we'll also be integrating third-party APIs, such as the Pokemon one, for example, in case you find any cool data sources. You can very much then integrate them with your app. So I think without further ado, I haven't really missed too much there. I think we should just jump straight in. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Present now. Let's go entire screen. This should be good fun. Alrighty. There we are. There's everyone. Look at that. There you are. Look at everyone. So first things first, when you're sort of getting started with Git, and you want to create a repository. And a repository is just basically a folder, a directory where all of your code lives. And Git will manage everything in that directory, all of its subdirectories for you. Another thing you want to do when creating a Git project is you want to sort of link it to some sort of, I don't even know what the technical word would be. What is GitHub? Is it just a Git repository?
It's a remote repository, basically.
Remote repository.
But it's like a server that's like storing the code for you. You have a repository on your local machine, and then you're pushing it to a remote repository so that if your computer explodes, you've still got it on that remote server.
That is very well put. So I've just signed into my GitHub. So GitHub is one of these remote repositories. Nothing too special here, but the main thing you want to do is just go over here. There'll be a sidebar where it says repositories, and there'll be a big green new button. Pretty hard to miss. Click that, and then you can give yourself your repository name. So, for example, my HackVision.
Very handy storing all your passwords on GitHub in a public repository, of course.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you give it a name, give it a description. Again, the public stuff, so you can change it to be public or private. Probably want to make it private so nobody steals your good ideas. And then down here, there's some extra stuff. Adding a README file basically just gives literally described right here. You can write a longer description about your project. If you want to keep any notes or anything about like your pitch, this might be a good spot to do it. There's also a Git Ignore. If we click this, you can see there's a bunch of these. These are like different templates for Git Ignores for different languages or projects. So there's not anything for React. Is there a JavaScript one? No, there's not. Okay. So there's a Python one, which will be good for our Flask one. But we won't add that now, and we'll just add a README. A license is if you're doing open source, which you won't really need to worry about. So once you've sort of done this, pretty quick, simple, you can go ahead and create yourself a repository. Ta-da! Here's your Git repository sitting in GitHub, all ready to go. So I'm just going to quickly brush over this. If you want to add new people to this, so you want to make sure your teammates can access this, you just go to Settings, Manage Access. You'll have to type in your password. Let me do that. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Will I remember off the top of my head? No. Oh, wait. Oh, I've done it again. You can go here and you can add your teammates. If I go here, I can't even remember yours, but
it's like Louis Knuckles.
Yeah, I got Millie's one here. This is probably a good one. There we are. The key organizer right here. And you can invite them and add them to the repository just like that. They'll have to go through and accept an invite, but yeah, that's just more details. So getting this repository from GitHub onto your computer is actually quite easy. You can simply go here to this code part, and then there will be a link just here that will allow you to download it. So I'll just copy this link, and I will open up a new terminal, which I should have prepared earlier, but let's do. Oh, is it going to work with CMD? Well, this is very hot and fast right here. And if we go git clone and we paste that in there, just like that, you'll see it will start cloning down our Git repository. And if we cd into my HackVision idea, do a little bit of a dir because it's CMD, we'll see that we have our README file and all of the Git stuff has come down with this as well. So we can start using this project. I will quickly go ahead and just open it up inside my IDE. So that is the wrong folder. That's okay. Got to navigate to the right spot. Scroll on the way. There we are. And opening up that directory, that's an interesting one. We can see here, we have our code right here. You know, this is the README file that's auto-generated, my HackVision idea. There's our description that we put in before. And we can sort of start getting programming. So I will show you some sort of basic workflows around getting going with Git. Let's say we created a new file, awesome ideas.txt, and I won't do that because that will help too much. And we wanted to add this awesome idea. We got some really cool stuff in here. Literally really cool stuff. But yeah, we want to make sure that we can add this to our Git repository. So that way, when we send it back up to GitHub, all our other teammates can get access to it. So the way you go about that in Git is you do, to see what files you have, you can do git status. We can see here we got a .idea. Don't worry too much about that. Don't add them in straight away. Those are sort of dangerous to share in Git. But we can see that we have our awesome ideas.txt. So we go ahead and we go git add awesome ideas.txt. and then we do a git status again, we can see it's moved from red to green, and it says changes to be committed. So Git adds it in this staging zone where you can then go ahead and commit it. And committing is basically saying, I've done work on this. The work is good. I'm
committed to this change.
I'm committed to this change. Very well put. So we go git commit. Do this little -m, which means a message. And you can write in a little message describing these changes. So add in awesome ideas. Once we do this, we can see it will tell us one file has changed with one insertion, i.e. one line has changed in there. And if we go git status again, we can see it's completely disappeared. And that basically means that that has become like the sort of stable version, the head of the project.
Right, yeah. If you do git log, you'll see the commit.
That is a good point. We can see here, that message I just typed in right here. And we can see it is a new commit where it is the head the head of the main branch. And the main branch, in a little bit of more technical sense, is just the root of the project. Once you're in here, you have to type Q to quit because it runs in Vim, which is some piece of arcane technology.
Hey,
but once you
talk smack about Vim.
Yeah, I reckon Sam's gonna get his back up a little bit about that as well. But yeah, once you've done that, you can sort of see all of that. It's now time to share that with all your other teammates. So the simplest way to do that is just do git push. And because we can see it's pushed up here to our github.com, the same my account and my HackVision idea project. And we can see from this commit to this commit has now been pushed to the main branch on the on GitHub. We didn't have to set up any other things. Like normally you would have to set up what's called a remote, which is basically just saying the remote source for this project is now on GitHub because we did that git clone initially instead of doing it in another method. It sets up all of that sort of stuff for us, which makes it super easy.
And so I'd say before we go into, that's basically the general idea around GitHub. The whole idea is it's supposed to have somewhere remote that you can easily store your code, share your code with other people, and keep track of your changes. But I'd be interested in, I guess, having everyone just like throw your hand up if you feel fairly comfortable with GitHub and you're cool with us moving on to the next thing. I think you can put your hand up in the actual, if you click raise hand.
Oh, whoops, sorry. I just like immediately thought given.
I guess another good question. Do you recommend pushing by GitHub desktop app or directly or to remote through the IDE? It's whatever you're comfortable, really. I think IDEs make it a lot easier to do things. Like I didn't show it with PyCharm. I just did it with the CMD. But in the end of the day, it all does exactly the same thing. It's just whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever's easiest for you and your teams to learn. That's pretty much the main takeaway here. Git's relatively simple in most cases being anything that's not a merge. But yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing, a lot of that kind of comes down to personal preference. A lot of people use different, I know some people who use source tree, which is like a very UI based kind of thing. Some people use their IDEs. I personally like to just kind of stay in the command line a lot. So I'll use just like straight Git commands, or I use a tool called TIG, which like visualizes stuff in the command line for me. But yeah, at the end of the day, you can find a workflow that works well for you.
Yeah, that's the most important part. Experiment around, figure out what is the easiest for you to do, and then stick to that. No point making it tricky.
Command line tool I like is called TIG, T-I-G. It's like Git backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of other good resources. But yeah. As for your other question, are rollbacks on the commits possible since we haven't pushed? Yes, and you can even roll back when you have pushed. It does make things a little bit trickier. You have to do some more special commands, like git pushing with force and resetting heads and rebasing. If you ever get to that point, it's best. Stack Overflow is probably a good friend, and read up on a few things before you start attempting to fix it, because there's a chance you could just make it worse. That has happened to me numerous times before. But yeah, all of that's very much possible. You can very much go back, control the history, edit, delete, update, add new things in that aren't just at the top of the project, the head, if you will.
Yeah. If you're interested in getting into like more advanced topics around Git, look into the command git reflog, which shows you a history of all of the commands that you have done. And then you can actually go back in history, not just for previous changes that you've made, but previous actions that you've taken. And then another really useful command is git rebase. Have a look at the documentation around that. That can be very, very useful. But there's definitely more advanced stuff. So if you're not comfortable with Git, you can get yourself into trouble messing around with that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, just quickly, I've been posting the links for GitHub and a GitHub cheat sheet in hashtag software architecture workshop. It's under workshop discussions in our Discord. So
yeah. Yeah. So now's a good point as well. We've also set up a another Git repository before this, with some example code in here. Yeah, so if we have a look at that, if we go to part 1, it's got a example of a Git Ignore and a Git cheat sheet that Louis has written up with a lot more in-depth stuff about commands that we just went through. So restoring files, switching branches, merging, all of these other sort of things that are a lot more advanced, that you can easily refer to if you ever need to come across them. There's other parts, part 3 and part 2 and part 4, I think. We didn't get to 3 and 5 because we thought it might be too much. Do we need to put a project outline through GitHub pages? I don't believe you do. I don't think there's any requirement to do that. You will need to put it somewhere, I believe. I'll defer to Sam or someone else. But yeah, it's also... yeah, the GitHub pages is another tool you can use. But yeah, I guess continuing on to part 2, Flask and React. Unless anyone else has some other questions. Go once, go
yeah, I think
twice.
someone's asking if they need to put the project online through GitHub pages. I've never used it, so...
No, I don't think you do. I think just the demo and the source is all you needed, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Sam's posted there. No, you do not. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Alrighty. So moving on, we'll go to part 2, getting set up with React and Flask. So this is the part where you set up Git, everyone's got access to it, everyone's ready to start coding. What next? This is the main part of setting up the project. Trying to think what's the best way to approach this. Probably getting started with the overall structure of your project is a good place. So you've come up with your idea. You thought we need a web page and some sort of like live data to make the page a bit more dynamic. Really, maybe something like a Google Maps or just some sort of storing users in a database, or keeping a list of items like a to-do app or something like that. And you figured out this idea, and now you're ready to start coding, and you sort of freeze up and you think, wow, where do I start? So you kind of identify the main parts as a website and a REST, some sort of server that handles data and sends it to and from, and that's where Flask and React sort of come in. So I guess we will jump through with React first. React is the website part of that. It's basically a framework that uses JavaScript or TypeScript, and it allows you to build out really robust and powerful UIs really quickly. Comparing it to the old way with HTML and CSS and JavaScript to do interactivity, it can actually really speed up that whole process by merging them all into one. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to go and create a new React code base inside this Git project. So npx create app. I'm going to do it with a template of TypeScript, just like that, and then I call it.
Does React need like certain dependencies to download first?
Yeah, that is actually a good point. Let me just type this out like that. I believe that's correct. While that's downloading, it seems to be doing it all good. Yeah. So to work with React, you need to use Node and NPM. Generally, you can use other things, but Node and NPM is a pretty standard way of doing things. What Node is just a JavaScript engine. So if you've ever used like Python, it's just an interpreter. Or if you've used other languages like Java or something like that, it's sort of like the Java runtime environment. And it sort of just takes your JavaScript code and runs it for you. And NPM is a sort of package manager for Node. It doesn't actually stand for Node Package Manager. That's a fun fact for the day. But it controls all of the packages. So such things like React, TypeScript. If you use any UI packages, so Material UI done by Google is something you can use in React. All of those things are controlled through NPM. That's a good question. So I'm just waiting for this to finish up. Louis, this might be a good time to chime in if you have things to add.
I'm good. I'm interested. I'm under the impression NPM does stand for Node Package Manager. So.
It actually does not.
What's it stand for? What's the N?
I believe, is it recursive, Sam?
It's NPM Package Manager.
No, it's not Node Package Manager. Where is it? We can actually search this up. NPM.
It doesn't matter.
There we are. A little sidetrack.
Is it like RPM?
I think so. Yeah. It's where is it?
I found it. It's on bloody Wikipedia. Get your sources, cracky. Contrary to popular belief, NPM is in fact not an acronym for Node Package Manager. The precursor to NPM was actually a bash utility named PM, which made a short form of package make inst, a bash function that installed various things on various platforms. If NPM were ever to be considered an acronym, it would be as Node PM, or initially New PM. I can check the source.
I think that is correct.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go. You learn something every day.
You learn something every day.
I would just say, throw out there in case anyone's not very clear or aware of what a package manager actually is. So if you're working, you can think of it kind of like if you're working in the Java space and there's some library of code, maybe your teammates has written some other classes of code and you want to use that in your code. If you have the source code of that in your repository, you can easily reference it, right? But if you want to publish that code so that other people can use it in their project, they'll package it as like a library or a package that other people can use. And then you need to be able to download that code and then be able to reference that in your project. So that's what package managers basically help you do, is pull down chunks of code so that you can basically use what other people have done and then get stuff done a lot faster because you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, that's pretty good definition. I think that's the main point. Is definitely you can reuse it. Anyone else can reuse it, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Good one. Yeah. Anyway, so our download has completed, and if we look here, now we have all of this extra stuff happening inside here. We have this, if we open these and we open this, well, let's not even begin to scroll through that because that'll take a day and a half. But you have all these new files, and you're thinking, okay, what do I need to worry about? There's some things, obviously, like this folder, I'm never, ever, ever going to understand. What are the things that you need to worry about? So if we have a look here, there's this one file called a package.json. And this has some stuff in it, like some dependencies. So we can see, there's React. There's TypeScript. We're using TypeScript. We can see these other things. So it's got the name of the project here. It's got private true. That's interesting. And there's these script sections where it's got start, build, test. They all sound like things that we need to know about. Everything else seems a bit sort of up in the air. Who knows what it is? Basically, this is sort of like the brain of the React project. This is sort of where everything will look first, trying to figure out what dependencies it needs, what little scripts it has, if it has a name, versions, what browsers it should try and work on. There's other things you can put in here, like different types of dependencies. It can blow out really big, but a good way to think of it is the brain of the package. Looking also for other things that are important, there's this big README that it will give you, where it tells you about these scripts. It's a little bit, it's a pretty good read to sort of have a look through, but the main ones of importance is this yarn start here. Oh, this should be npm start, because I have yarn installed in my system. So like this, it'll be a little bit different for if you're just downloading Node and npm, but the contents will basically be the same thing. Having a look around as well, you see this public folder, and it's got some icons. That's pretty cool. Oh, that's interesting. There's logos. There's a robots list. That's interesting. This is basically sort of auxiliary files that are generated. So that's set up for the website. So this icon will actually be used as like the tab icon. If we go here, we see here, that icon is this sort of icon or this icon that you'll see in your project. But getting now to the code part, the part that everyone sort of needs to get the hang of. You'll see all this source folder, and this is basically where you'll put all of your React code when you're developing. Right now, it's full of a whole bunch of different things. So we can see you got this logo SVG and all of these other sort of weird files. But there's basically two really important ones you need to worry about. This index.ts, TSX or JSX, I believe it will be if you don't use TypeScript. And this is basically where the app will start. So this is the very first file that will be called for your React app, and it will start rendering things out for React. In short, you don't need to worry about it too much, but what it does is this react.dom.render, and it renders this function. Will take some JavaScript and an element to render it to, but most importantly, inside that JSX, sorry, not JavaScript, it will take some JSX and an element to render to. It has this app component, which directly refers to this app.tsx file or JSX. This is basically the heart of your React project. If the package.json is the brain, this is the heart. Everything leads here and everything comes out of here. This is pumping the blood of your code. And if we have a look at this, we can see things like divs and p tags and a tags, and you start to think, hey, isn't that like HTML? And you'd be basically correct. So with that small, quick tool in mind, I'm going to go ahead and CD into this React project. So it's my React project. And I'm going to do yarn, which would be npm if you're doing it the proper way. And I'm just going to type the command start.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I think Jack Hollis London has a question.
Yep. All right, Jack.
Well, feel free to unmute if you want to, Jack.
How do you get your get post API calls in your React apps?
That is a good question, which we will definitely answer in about 10 minutes. So personally, I use Fetch, Axios, and Graph in different environments. Uni, I used Fetch. At work, I use Axios. For personal projects, I use Graph. So there's a lot of different answers, but we'll go through the most straightforward one, which is just Fetch in this project. Umair asked a question as well. We do not need HTML and CSS separate files if we use React. Yep, you are correct. One of the nice things is it bundles it all in together. So while there is CSS files inside this example project, so it doesn't make it super perfect, you can do it also inline. And if you have a look here, this is a JavaScript function that in turn returns what is essentially some HTML. So it combines them all into one nice spot. But yeah, so we ran the start command. And if we go here, it'll open up a new tab for us at localhost on the port 3000. And we can see we have our React website. If I pull this over to the side, I open this up here, you can see here we have like a image for the app logo, which is this. It has edit src.app, that maps right there. And it has this A tag, which is a link. And if we click this A tag, it will take us to a React blog, which is a really good tutorial. I suggest it might be worth reading it, half an hour or so if you're really new with React, just to get the hang of a bit more of the core concepts outside of this. One of the nice things about React when it comes with Create React App is it's all got hot reloading and a whole bunch of really cool new features. So we can do things like this. Oh, that's me. And if we go ahead and save that file, we can see it immediately gets reflected inside the web page, which allows you to test really, really quickly if things break. So if we do something really naughty and do this, like that, and we try to save it, it gives us a nice big error. And then when we fix it, all we have to do is come here and refresh it. Oh. I missed something again. Oh, wait, no, I think this is just this. It can be a bit finicky sometimes, so you may need to just make a little small edit. Add a new blank space in and then save it again, and it will normally sort itself out. But yeah, that's pretty much the core reason of using React. It allows you to sort of really quickly develop some things. But now I think I'll go ahead and show you how to create a Python Flask application, which is sort of the other side of your big idea. Now we've got this website, we can start working on it. How do we get some data to it? How do we, maybe we want to hook it up to a database or get some other sort of API calls happening? And the way you can do this, sorry.
It's the back end of your application.
Yeah, the back end of your application. So if we go here, for this, you'll need to install Python. So you can just go to python.org. Yeah, python.org/downloads. Download 3.10. Once you've installed that, you're pretty much good to go. All you need to do then is create a Python file, call it app. So in this case, it'll be app.py. I'm going to do this, which would add it to our GitHub repository. And then I'm going to go to the Flask website. This is all in our cheat sheet as well in that GitHub repo. You can look at all this documentation. It's all listed for you. Jump to the quick start section. And it's got a very aptly named heading, a minimal application. If we copy and paste this, we basically, from that, in what should be 9 lines, including all white space, only 1, 2, 3, 5 business lines, you've set up your Flask application. So we open a new terminal, and you also have to install Pip if you're on Linux. I think it becomes bundled with Windows, which stands for something, but it's the package manager for Python. So Pip is to Python what npm is to Node. If we do pip install Flask with a capital F.
There's instructions on how to install these things in the README in this repository as well that you guys can have a look at.
Yeah, that is very good to say. I'm going to brush over a lot of these sort of setup things because they're all sort of written there. And the React documentation and the Flask documentation, we jump back a bit, where it is, installation. They all have pretty comprehensive guides on how to install things. There's the command right there. I sort of skipped over this part because it's not super necessary. But going back to here, all we have to do once we've installed Flask is just do Flask run, I believe. And then you'll get this little pop out here. where it gives you all of your information and it tells you it's running on this 127.0.0.1, means your computer, at port 5000 instead. If we click that, it will take us to what is essentially our Flask app. And this is a response from our server right here. So this one's a lot more simple than the React sort of setup one. It doesn't take us anywhere near as much to get running, but there are still a few moving parts here. What happened when I ran Flask run is it automatically looked for a file called app.py, and it found it in that same directory right here. What it does then is it extracts this app variable and runs that as your server. So anything connected to this variable will then be available as the server. You can sort of see that we have attached something to the app via this decorator, app.route. And what that allows us to do is it sets up a little route here at just the index page. That's the name for nothing. And we can define a function underneath that and write all our business logic here, like print. See? And if we do this again, so we save that, I believe we'll have to restart because let me write that. I think that'll work. That did not work. That also did not work. I will need to read up the documentation more. This is the fun of doing a live demonstration. I forget things. But if we go ahead and refresh this page, we can see in the console here, just like our Python code says, hello GDSC. We can also write other routes. So if we copy this and we go type in GDSC. It's a quick example of things you can change, GDSC. Restart this just real quick. We need to change the function name as well. That's something else I missed. And that there, we can see the old functionality is still there, but if we go now to /GDSC, we can see it will now show us hello GDSC. So that's a very quick way setting up Python Flask and a React app, and now you're basically off to the races. You can do, you can start coding new endpoints in your Flask app. You can start making new React components. Good to go. I think this is a good time to say in our HackVision tutorial, step 2, as all of this sort of set up again with some cheat sheets. So we have a React one here where it sort of tells you how to get started. And it tells you a little bit more information about props and state and creating components and things like that. And then we also have a Flask one just here as well. Same sort of thing as just described, but also explains a little bit more about endpoints and links to the Flask documentation and the React documentation, which is the most important part. Do you want to add anything to that, Louis?
No, that's cool.
Alrighty. So we got the bones of it all good. Now time to actually start doing things. Wait, does Jack have his hand up for a question, or is that something else?
I think that's from back in the GitHub days.
Probably. It just went down, so I assume it was a GitHub thing. But yeah. Yeah, so moving on to the third part, we are now going to mix in some good fun right here. So we're going to go here. Everyone loves a little bit of Pokemon in the afternoon. Right here, there's this wonderful API, this third-party API called the Pokey Api that allows you to query all of your favorite Pokemon and all of their abilities and types, and anything else you need through a REST API. Awesome. Who wouldn't use that for a hackathon?
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth just saying, so we're showing, like, for any application, you basically got 3 primary components, right? You got your front end, where you're rendering some UI, maybe doing some like front end logic. You got your back end where you're processing some data, potentially like storing things in memory or in a database. In a hackathon, I'd probably just store stuff in memory, not worry about a database. And then you've got like third-party APIs and services that you can reach out to get other functionality to enhance the functionality of your application in a cheap, easy way. And so Thomas is just going to go through how we can kind of tie those three parts together. So we've got React, which can handle your front end, Flask, take care of the back end for you, and then show how we can integrate an API call into that from a third-party service.
Yeah, that is, the core parts of our hackathon. Very well said. You articulate your points very well. I feel like I'm all over this show, and you're here like just smooth as butter. But yes, so integrating that third part now, these external APIs, we've got this wonderful Pokemon API. There's other things like Google Maps. I'm sure there's a lot of environmental data APIs, all sorts of other geospatial ones, definitely, that you can definitely access for more practical things. But for the fun of it, we use Pokemon. But yeah, so looking at this, we can see here that it has this sort of scheme where it's got this pokyapi.co/API/v2, and then it has these examples down here we can have a look at. So we have a look here. This is, we submit here, and it gives us this nice response for Ditto. It tells us what Ditto actually is. We have a look at Pokemon/1. We can see it's got Bulbasaur. All of these other sort of different ones here. There's a lot of different things you can do. And again, it's probably worth reading through documentation to do this. But for now, we will go through Pokemon/1. We have a look here and we see, there's some data that we don't really need, but, it's got some species stuff. Sprites. Look at this. It's got a URL for a front default sprite. If anyone's not familiar with the word sprite, it just means image. It's a sort of game development thing, I think. 2D image. You can see here we got a tiny little Bulbasaur. We'll make it nice and big. Let's get that into our React app. So thinking now we've got some piece of functionality we want. We've got all the different parts and pieces. How do we actually start integrating that? So this is sort of a bit more of a dive into React. The way you do these sort of things is you start creating these little, I guess, functions or little parts of your UI called components. And what components are, it's exactly that. They're just little parts of your UI written in JavaScript and TypeScript that follow a set of rules that React sort of lays out. And using these components, it provides you with a whole bunch of really cool benefits. It links, so if your data changes or the state of these components ever change, it'll automatically redraw them. So you don't have to or re-render them. So you never have to worry about making sure to redraw your API or your website or it just handles it all for you. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little Bulbasaur component. So by convention, you need to use a capital. So Bulbasaur.tsx. I've done something naughty. I'm just going to delete this. And go ahead and import React from React. So this is sort of a general boilerplate for creating components. We will do a const Bulbasaur component equals this anonymous function, and then export default. We'll also create an interface. So this is a TypeScript thing. And just leave that blank, and we'll add this here. So, just keep it happy. So there's a few different things we've done here. We've imported React. I don't believe it's strictly necessary anymore, but that's just an old habit that's dying hard. This allows you also to use all the React namespace, which if you ever need to use more advanced features can be really useful. Then we've got this TypeScript interface for props, which I'll come back to in a second. We got this exporting the component so we can use in other places. And then we have the component itself here. And we can see here the components uses this props interface that we set up before. Basically, all of these moving parts are sort of unify as a whole and become a React component. And you can start writing your HTML or JSX right here. And basically get moving on building a UI. That's the word. So I'm going to go here. I know that we need an image component because we want to show a cool image. We'll go make it a slash like this. And it needs an SRC. Luckily, we have this SRC here. Put that in there. And perhaps we also want a title. So we go ahead and we do we'll do H1. It's Bulbasaur. We say if we format this a little bit better, so it's easier to see, we can see it's giving us some nice big red warnings, and that's basically because React tells you all of these things should be wrapped in one component itself. So we'll just chuck a div around all of this together, and we can see it's now happy. Go ahead and properly format this a little bit better. Like that. And we have an example of it. And we go back to our React website and we see it's not really there yet. And we're like, why? We just wrote all this wonderful UI. We expect it to be popping up right here. And basically the way React works is you need to actually then inside the app or any other component that is being rendered by app or some other component that's rendered down the chain, you need to actually start calling these components. So if we add something like this in, we'll add it at the top because Bulbasaur's cool. We can just do this. Put that in here. We do a slash here. This is just a self-opposing tag. And we can see it's also generated this import. If we go ahead and save this file, we can see our Bulbasaur has now appeared in the web page. Awesome. But that hasn't really actually called our API yet. This is sort of just static. You know, maybe what happens if a user types in an input and they expect it to come back as Ditto or Pikachu, and that's pretty much my Pokemon knowledge right there. Yeah, you know, maybe you want to make it a bit more dynamic. And the way to do this is if we want to actually consume this API right here, we'd have to use basically a fetch, which is a way for React. Excuse me, just a second. It's getting a tad hot here. But yeah. Using a fetch is just a way for React to call these external APIs and get this done. So I'm going to go ahead and write in a few things here. The first is this, use state, use effect. These are specific React things. That is interesting. That was a strange error. I've never seen that one before. And we'll go here and we'll go ahead and put in the fetch. So I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger for now, just so it's thinner. Okay. So this won't actually change anything just yet. But what this has done is sort of pulled in a couple of other concepts from React, namely this use state and this use effect. And then it's called in this fetch from the JavaScript, TypeScript side of things. So going over this fetch first, what this does is exactly what we saw on the website, where we hit submit, and it gives us this big JSON object. JSON stands for JavaScript Oriented Notation. It's sort of a standard amongst APIs. You can find a lot of good resources online that explains how this works, but for the process, I'm just going to breeze over it because we're running a bit low on time. And then it's a promise, so it's you need to use this .then function, so and supply a callback. So once the API request has gone through and it's got the data and it's spent some time downloading it, these callback functions will then run once that data is completely downloaded. This first one is just a simple transition one saying, now that we have the full response with the HTTP codes and any network errors and all sorts of other stuff we don't really care about, all we want to do is make sure we get the contents, so in this case our Pokemon, and get the JSON data from that. And then once that's done, because this is another asynchronous thing, it can take some more time, we do another .then, which changes that response. And now we have this data and we want to set this Bulbasaur object, whatever that is. Next sort of comes to the React side where we sort of said we want to make Bulbasaur a state thing. So we're saying, this component, depending on the state of Bulbasaur object, should look different. If Bulbasaur hasn't been downloaded from the website yet, maybe we want to have a loading component. But then if the Bulbasaur is there, we want to obviously show Bulbasaur and put in the link and make everything happy. And it comes back to that concept of React. You tell it there's this set of state, and whenever that changes from the last time, we want React to re-render and redraw everything with the new state and show everything correctly with all the new information we have. So to do that, we use this this first part here, which is the actual data here. We do this, and if we do something like this, so if I believe that's fine. We can sort of infer that it is loading. If we do that, we can say there's no big JSON object from our API yet. We can think it's loading. We can actually say here, when it's loading, just return a H1 where it says loading. Otherwise, so this will implicitly be the else. Otherwise, actually return Bulbasaur. But instead of having these hard-coded things in, we can actually just do Bulbasaur object dot. And if we have a look at our Pokey API, we can see it has a dot. It has a name property here. So this is the root object. We copy this. We say name. I have to type this as any so it doesn't complain. And then we also know that it has this sprites object right here with all these other different sprites, but we want to use front default. So we do something like this. Instead of this, we take this out and we do Bulbasaur object dot sprites dot front default. We have a look here, make sure that's correct. And voila, we basically have our full React component now using all these other concepts, such as state and this use effect thing, and rendering out a much more robust UI depending on what we need. So we go back to our website, and we hit refresh. We can see here it loads pretty quickly, but if I go ahead and do some magic that I just thought of, and we make, I'm not going to do that. Let's do this. Offline, and we refresh it. That's not going to work. If we do slow 3D, this will manually sort of like emulate a very slow network request. As you can see, it's taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But we can see here now it's loading until it actually gets up to speed. That was very quick, but yeah. We can see now that our UI has become a lot more robust and handles a lot of these other sort of cases we need. So I'm going to disable the throttling, pull that up. And yeah, I guess now's a good time to ask any questions about that sort of thing. That was, oh, you're already in the chat. I don't even need to go here.
Not bad, yeah. By all means, add to it.
Yeah. What if the fetch completes after the component has been unmounted? That is a very technical question for someone who knows a little bit more about React than I planned for. JavaScript. Yeah, I'll come back to that one after everything. There's some things I can add to that, I think, but it's down a long rabbit hole. Short answer, nothing. But yeah, so we've done all of this with the Pokemon API, but maybe we want to add our own custom spin on it. So we've got these APIs here. Maybe we want to say, get a username, or if they've saved their preferences, maybe they want dark theme, maybe they saved their favorite Pokemon the last time they're on the website, or they've actually tracked on a map all the points where they've picked up litter over time, and you want to show that to them and congratulate them for their effort, because that's much more sustainable than Pokemon. We might go here and we say, return this JavaScript object with this message, some important. We've set up Flask API to do things that we want it to do. And we restart it. We have a look here. We go to our GDSC endpoint, and we can see here we got this message for some important information. And we want to get that onto our React app. We got Bulbasaur here, but we want to get some important information onto our React app. The way we do this is pretty much exactly that same process. So we have our Bulbasaur component here. I'm literally going to do this. Create a new file, new TypeScript file, and we're going to call it important. Add this. Paste over the top here, and I'm just going to do a cheeky little. Yeah, I'm going to just rename all of these variables to be exactly the same. Oops. I have music going on.
Technical problems.
Important message, and then we're just going to change this to be important message here. This is the fun thing. Live coding, you get to see all the fun things that happen on my computer. That when I accidentally forget to hold the function button and hits next song message, and we'll go here, and instead of doing this, we'll just do localhost 5000, which is the Flask server, and GDSC. We won't use HTTPS because that's not set up. I believe everything apart from this. Right here, this should be pretty much everything. I know there will be an error, but I do plan on showing that as well.
The difference between a senior engineer and a junior engineer writes code, runs it, and it works, and they're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm so great. A senior engineer writes code, runs it, and it works, and they're like, what's wrong?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I know there's going to be an issue here, but I want to highlight the point. Failed to fetch, and we hit refresh. We can see if we go to the network tab, what is this? That is more than I expected, actually. But we go to our console, and it says here has been blocked by cause policy, and that's a pretty common thing you may get, especially working with APIs. So I'm going to show you how to quickly fix that. We're going to stop this, and we are going to go to our Flask thing. And we are going to quickly install a package called Pip Install Flask. Pause. I believe I got that right. Awesome. This is now where I'm going to have to go and have a look at the other repository because it's in there. I'm 99% sure. Step 4, I believe it will be.
Yeah. So
yep.
It's there.
There it is. That's the one I'm looking for. Right there. I did not install it. Come on. That's because I'm running on the wrong version of Python. That's what I get. There we go. Just on the cheeky there. Don't worry too much about that. It should work if you just do it the correct way. But if we do this cause around our app, and we save it, and we run our Flask again, and we go ahead back to our web page, and we refresh. Objects are not valid, React children. Oh, where have I done that? Okay. Now we... that's actually caught me completely off guard. We were almost there. Yep. Okay. No, I know what's happened. Here, I was supposed to do set message, and then I was supposed to do message here. I'll take out the message part that we need. And if we have a look here, ta-da, we now have this some important information. You can see we haven't typed it in manually and cheated here. That's coming straight from our Flask server. So yeah, that sort of wraps that side of things up. The only thing I'm going to say is about this cause magic I just did. Just remember, if you see it, there are solutions to it that are like just literally 2 lines like this, and use those because they just make life so much easier. And it's just one of those errors. The origin of it and the history of it I could speak on for probably about another 10 minutes, but it's completely unnecessary to what we're trying to show here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to point out. We've now got a React app. It's pulling data from a third-party API and your Flask server, and it's completely re-rendering all as it should. With loading screens, it doesn't handle errors very well, but you can do that. Yeah, the world is yours now. You can definitely run with this and build out a really good hackathon project with actually a good set of features and have it be robust and demoable and get yourself first prize. And I think, yeah, I think that's pretty much the most of it. Louis, have I missed anything?
No, yeah, that basically caps it off. So I would just say, if you are interested in kind of playing with this more, we've got that GitHub repository. There's a few different folders. You can kind of see the different states of what we went through. But if you want to just kind of jump to the last folder and clone that down, you can use that as a framework so that you don't have to set everything up yourself and just kind of remove the code that we've got there, the Pokemon stuff, and start adding your own stuff.
Yeah,
I'd say that's like a nice quick way for you to get set up so that you'll have everything there and you can start building something out.
Yeah, I'll put that here as well again for everyone who wants to have a look at that. So if you're still struggling to get started, or you need a bit more of a, you think this is, wow, this is a lot better than the stuff I was doing before, it's all there for you. Pick out all the sort of cheat sheets we've written there as well, and then they all have links to external documentation so that you can, if any of it was too vague or you've forgotten or I didn't do a good job explaining it, all the professionals have written all the things you need right there.
And yeah, I would also add as well, don't get too down on yourself if you're like getting bugs and errors and weird things are happening and you're like, why does nothing work? That is the life of a software developer. Everyone spends much time debugging and trying to fix things and figure out why stuff's broken. If you do get stuck on stuff, like reach out to the mentors. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you. And if you are like really new to all of this stuff and it's just like super overwhelming, you're like, I heard React and Flask and everything else went over my head. That's totally understandable. Just treat the experience as like an opportunity to kind of start learning this stuff and kind of have a look at the repository. Don't stress too much about having some amazing, epic, like million-line application by the end of the weekend. If you just kind of come away from it with something, or even just with a better understanding of kind of that full stack of software, then I'd say that's a huge win.
Yeah, 100%. This hackathon was very much pitched to newcomers, people who haven't had a lot of practical experience, is my understanding. So definitely just give it a shot. If you come out the end of it with absolutely nothing working, but you've learned something, that's the most important part. and have fun while you're doing it.
No,
have fun
no
while
fun.
you're doing it.
No fun.
No fun. I think that pretty much wraps everything up.
Yeah, Stephanie's raised her hand. Stephanie?
Sorry, quick question. Feel free to delete this part from the recording, but am I allowed to post that little chat thing about where I said code can promise things until I said so JavaScript can procrastinate?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Just to double check about that. Yeah, because I thought that was a bit funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was some other things. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Oh my god, I'm tripping over my words. There was something about, I believe it was Jack. I'm going to go back to your question. Where was it? Is Jack still in the call? I hope so.
Yeah, Jack Hollis, London. Yeah.
Yes. What if the fetch completes after the component has been unmounted? I found it. I'm going to answer your question. So this is actually a good fun one. What happens is the... Yeah, okay. So JavaScript works on the basis it has an event loop. So everything that happens in JavaScript is actually like a little event. It packages up and it says, here's the entry point, and it runs through all the code it needs to. And then when the event's done, it pops off the queue and pops off the loop completely. Excuse me. And it's just done. And then it goes on to the next event. Or if it hits an async point, so it does a network request or a file IO or anything like that, it will put it back on the queue for later. And then once it's ready, you'll pick it back up and continue on executing. So if the component is unmounted and you've done what we've done and haven't done anything special, what actually happens is it will go through, complete the request, probably cache it, so if you call it again, it's still there. And then it will try and do the rest of its stuff and basically see it's undefined and basically be like, whoa. It's pretty hard. I think in that scenario, it will actually give an error because the callback will be referencing things that I'm pretty sure won't exist. I could be wrong, but you have to be pretty damn tricky to get it to do that. What's interesting about that is, though, a lot of things in React don't actually unmount. So if you have like navigators and you go from one screen to another, it won't unmount. So all of this process will still happen behind the scenes. If you go to one page and come back to another, you could actually see all of your data being loaded, sort of like a preload thing just straight off the bat. And that sort of just comes down to, again, the tricky internals of JavaScript and the event loop, just basically still doing things behind the scene. Fun fact, I know a little bit about JavaScript and how it works. But yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions as well? I think it's probably a good time to go through them, if anyone's still around.
There was...
I knew Amir had some before, but I think we answered them. So if you have any more questions or things like that, cause, yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before everybody leaves, we do have to make an announcement about what's next to come. Jack? So, at 7 p.m., we have another mentoring session featuring Louis, Tom, plus all of our other mentors as well. So make sure to get as much help as you can from that within that time period. And also, to add to that, we're also having a raffle draw, and we do have a funky prize ready for that as well. So there's a category called Battle Zone, and inside there's Raffle 1 channel. So make sure to hop into that when 7 p.m. arrives. And that's it, folks. Happy hacking. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you.